Hey, everybody, and welcome to Prepper Talk Radio. This is our weekly live. This is the podcast for the prepared, our open discussion. Tonight, we're going to be diving in, throwing ourselves headlong into the deep end of what's going on in the world, kind of a threat check, if you will. And as a reminder, we're brought to you by our good friends over at AMP3. If you need first aid kits, which you probably do, you need to get good ones, American-made ones. One's made by preppers. And no, here's the bonus. David, one of the owners over there, he is a former ER doc and U.S. Navy medic. So when it comes to knowing the right things to have, these kits are fantastic. And I've got one in my car. I've got the IFAC. Check them out, amp-3.net. And you can use code PrepperTalk to save 15%. That's for our audience only. Don't share it with your friends. I'm kidding. Share it with everybody. Help them get prepared and get the best deal. Guys, are you excited? I'm excited.
Always
so excited.
Excited. This is the best part of the week. Going live with you guys and chatting with our misfit crew, our exciting, fun-filled family here on YouTube. And there's my son. He just came and went. So let's talk about it.
And he's back.
So what in the world's going on? So freaking much. Like we could go 1,000 different directions. Shane, you said you've got a list. Let's just start with your list, bro.
I always have a list. You know, I don't honestly know where to start. I think I just kind of open this up. My feelings, and I think that's where I like to go first, is just how I'm feeling at the moment. From what I'm seeing is I'm trying to put puzzle pieces together, right? That's really what I'm trying to do, is you see something happening here and there, and are they connected, and what do they mean? You know, maybe I'm reading into things, and I think that's what tends to happen to those who wear a tinfoil hat, trying to make sense of everything. I don't know that that's possible, and I think that's part of the objective, is to confuse everyone, to keep us wondering and keep us, in a bit of a traumatized, so that we can't figure things out. We don't know what's going on, and so nothing makes sense. And so that's just kind of where I feel things are at right now, is that it just, going back a couple of years, I've been watching the news and these events and taking notes since probably early 2013. I have stacks and stacks of notepads of events that are happening and trying to keep track. And then it just became way too much, to where it just take way too much time. And so I got to where I was just skimming the headlines and then digging in occasionally here and there to what, and just kind of going by my own instinct, to where I feel I should go, or what interests me, or what might affect me, locally or economically or whatever. And so that's basically what I do. I spend a lot less time now on reading the details, but just scanning the headlines. And so, and I think I've read enough to where I can assume, what is going on in that article. And that's all I really need are clues, because at this point in my life, a lot of that doesn't matter to me anymore, other than timing, right? That's what I'm looking for, is timing. Yeah. Trying to, I don't mean to be a procrastinator. I'm not trying to procrastinate my day of preparedness, right? I am trying to time to where, okay, when do I bug out? When do I get out? When do I do this? When do I do that? I've got a list of things and places and all kinds of goals, I guess you could call them. And so as I go through the news and watch every day, I'm watching every day a handful of sites that I have narrowed it down to where I get my news, and that I trust, that I kind of rely on, and I'm always looking for more. So if you have suggestions where I could be looking, I'm looking for events. I'm not looking, and maybe some interpretation of events for those who are in the know. But so that's kind of where my list is. That's kind of where my list goes. And I guess the first thing to start off that is kind of gives me a clue where things are is Israel, Lebanon, what's going on right now.
Oh man.
And I hesitate talking too deeply on some of these things because of the channel and other reasons. But we know that Israel launched a bunch of rockets into Lebanon, hitting residential homes where they claim that Hezbollah is hiding weapons and so forth. And this and some other things I'll mention as well. I mean, that's an escalation. That is a really big deal in my book. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. These things that are big deals. And those tend to stand out to me more now than they used to. It seems like I've kind of fine-tuned my spidey senses and I know what I'm looking for. So some things
Can I pause
they're not to you. Yeah, of course. I'm rambling.
What sites have you narrowed it down to? Joseph asked, I've had the same question I was going to ask anyways, but I'm glad Joseph asked so I can put it up here.
Well,
what are your sites?
I will go through during the chat and start dropping some in the chat for you guys.
Okay.
Does that
so
work?
For those of you guys listening, you got to make sure you head over to YouTube later. Look in the chat of this episode, World News Update, Threat Check for September 2024, sorry. And you'll see in the notes, Shane will post them all in there. But yeah, everything going
Shane,
over.
while you're at it, dude, make a PDF of some, put it in another document, and then we can make it available on our site at some point.
I can do that. I'll make a note right here.
We'll put it in our email. So join our email list. Make sure you're on our email list so that you get stuff like this that we can throw out there for you.
That would be great. I think rather than put a lot of pressure on me trying to share these right now, then I'll put them in a PDF and we'll put them on, send it out in an email. I think that's a good idea.
There you go. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see what's going on in the world because there's a million things going on, right? There were the pagers exploding and then the radios exploding. Now there's the bombing. It's a lot of he said, she said on the news. No one's given us a full, clear story of what's really going on. And there's all the misdirection in the world as well, right? It's insane how much is going on and how much is being hidden from us.
One of the things that I find interesting is that there's a Bible prophecy about Damascus, and that's right there in the middle of all that. Damascus is sitting right in the middle between Lebanon. Well, it's a little bit north of Israel, but it's right in the middle of all that. And so that's one of the things that the Christian preppers are really like, hey, wait a minute, this looks like it could be some end times prophecy stuff going on here. And that's the thing that one of the things that I just want to clarify, and I agree. I'm trying to watch the signs as well. I'm trying to be watchful for the signs, I should say. But one of the things I've realized is that the devil knows the signs too, and he can make false signs so that we think it's going to be something and it's really not that thing. So just be careful with that a little bit. I think it's something I've learned over the years anyways, as I've like, oh, this is the one thing that's in the Bible that says that and the one thing. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then God's like, about that. I learned it didn't really happen the way I thought it was going to. And I'm like, oh shoot, I should probably not tell everybody, if certain things are happening. But definitely something to be aware of, the fact that city is in prophecy and it's right there in the middle of all that going on over there.
Yeah,
it's interesting too. Rebecca brought this up. I wanted to mention it, but every time the mainstream is pushing one news story above all else, they're hiding something else. It's that misdirection I mentioned earlier, and Shane, you nailed it. You said P. Diddy, right? Everything in the news right now, P. Diddy, and all the lawyers and all the music execs that are going down with him or just disappearing or stepping down from their companies. It's static. It's trying to get us distracted, trying to keep you distracted. A lot of people who are so into that right now, they're into it because they're clearly in the distracted group. And we're waiting around it and through it and trying to find the right stuff. What's interesting is who just met in New York. While all this has been happening, we haven't heard about who is in New York.
Mm-hmm.
You know who?
Oh, it's the UN.
Yeah.
Yep.
And they're deciding how to take away our republic completely. How to make sure that our government is dismantled into their control. And we're allowing them to do this on our country.
Yeah, that's because the WHO couldn't do it. They couldn't pass their what I forget what it's called. They couldn't pass that, so now they snuck it into this new. What do they call it? They call it the Pact for the Future. Oh, that sounds so good. Pact for the Future.
And all these goals that they have, they're goals that we all want, but they're doing it with this complete hidden agenda. And I don't know. I mean, years ago, there was this big scare about 9/23. What's going to happen on the 23rd of September? Well, that numerology is still something those guys love. And what day were they meeting? The 22nd and 23rd of September. So it's all this stuff that's happening. And I know one thing that a lot of people typically think about in terms of the stock market crashing in September, or typically it's a bad. And then there's traffic right now about an October surprise, whatever that it could be. And is it something that we really need to be ready for? That's where I love the fact that we talk about being ready for everything all the time, because whatever October surprise comes, if it does come, great, we can be ready for it. If it doesn't come, great, we're still ready. You know what I mean? So consistently be ready, because they're going to, at some point, something's going to happen. False flags happen. And so we do need to be ready for what's going on. But if you're already ready, then you don't need to get ready, because you're ready. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I was gonna comment here, Rebecca. Let me go back to this comment here. When would I 100% bug out? I mentioned one here in the chat is when gold and silver make their moonshot. That is one of my hard indicators, and I say that because we're seeing it go up pretty good right now. Some people are saying it's launching its rocket ship. No, it's not yet. Not compared to what you're going to see. And when that happens, that's one of my hard rules, because that's only going to happen when it really hits the fan. Because the whole system is manipulation. I mean, that's our dollar system. I don't say money. Only gold and silver is money. Our money. But our entire system is based on manipulation, and it's all based on lies. So when that system breaks and the truth comes out, which gold and silver are truth, and it shoots the moon, that's a hard and fast rule, because that's only going to happen when it really goes crazy. When it really gets bad. Because
I was listening to, I don't know if he's an economist or something. I was listening to a podcast, and the guy was saying that a lot of the countries in the world are getting to the point where they're sick and tired of being manipulated by the petrodollar. And that's one of the reasons why the BRICS nations have really come and become so popular. A lot of these countries around the world are now moving into the agreements with the BRICS nations. And most of those countries, by the way, are working to have reserves of gold and silver, specifically gold, as part of their monetary system moving forward, because they know that the manipulation is so real when it's just a plain fiat currency. And there's some real evidence that, as the dollar begins to, and that's the thing that we all have to remember, that when gold shoots the moon, it's not because gold has gotten necessarily more valuable, although that's part of it, significant. It's not as significant of a part as the dollar has lost so much value that gold is now worth $10,000, because the value of gold it tracks with inflation. It tracks with those prices. And so you got to remember that if gold goes to 10,000 or 20,000 an ounce, that's because you're going to have to spend, $5,000 to buy a loaf of bread, or something,
Yeah.
And that's really when we're talking about crap. I mean, that's definitely an indicator that SHTF.
Yeah. Well, another indicator that popped up to me is, in the news, Putin talking about changing their nuclear doctrine, that if they are attacked within the motherland, not necessarily by anything nuclear, but if it is backed by a nuclear power country, so if Ukraine launches missiles into Russia, which the U.S. are on the verge of approving, and I think they've already talked about that. They say, "Hey, we're going to let them do this." That basically satisfies that new doctrine that Putin wants to to institute, to where, okay, we're essentially, or the Russia is essentially being attacked by the U.S., which is a nuclear power. So they now at that point would have the right within their own doctrine, their own laws, to use nuclear weapons. So
Yeah.
when a nuclear weapon goes off in Ukraine, potentially, I mean, if it goes off in New York, there's your 100%er right there, Rebecca. If there's a nuke in the U.S., 100%er, man, that's when I'm going to bug out. But it may only be for a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. That's going to be, you know, something I'll watch, right? That doesn't necessarily, at this point, me watching what the stock market does and how it's responding to everything that's going on. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Let's go up, right? Oh, look what's happening over here in this conflict over here, and a ship was attacked in the Red Sea, and there's oil spilling out, and there's 3 of them floating there. Oh, no big deal. Okay, the stock market goes up. Okay, it's completely ignoring those kinds of things. And I think even a nuclear blast in Salt Lake, hopefully not Salt Lake City, in New York or on one of the coasts, the markets could shrug that off. I definitely won't, but that's another thing that I'm looking at, and I'm seeing the signs that is potentially could happen again. Like you mentioned, Rebecca, that this new constitutional amendment for a decapitation strike protocol, that they're setting that up. That's another little clue that's out there, along with what Putin is saying about their nuclear doctrine. Let's add those up. What could that mean? I don't know. It's not getting any better.
Well, when you have nuclear powers making threats like this, you know, the World War III there's so many different things that over the last year with China and Taiwan, with Russia and Ukraine, and that could kick off so quickly and easily a hot World War III. I have an inclination that Cold World War III has already started. And a lot of times that people don't realize that world wars kind of start with sanctions and other things, which we've already started seeing and have seen over just already. And so when it gets hot, it's already, you know, quite a bit into the conflict. Hot meaning kinetic. And so I just feel like when they're starting to threaten things like that, now we have to be, okay, what's really going on? One of the things that I know for sure is that in Isaiah, I think, talks about it. I can't remember exactly, but there's supposedly in prophecy another civil war that could even happen in our country. And what we're seeing right now, it relates to what we're talking about right now, because what's going to happen is when the foreign governments see that the Americans are completely in chaos, they're going to see an opportunity to make a move. And I'm seeing, you know, you see, for example, I don't know, I just saw another video recently about some guy walking into a barbershop with an AR, some kind of gun, and robbing the barbershop. And they're like, this looks like it's in a third world country, but this is in New Jersey right now, or something like that. And I'm like, what? So there's weird, like, even places a couple months ago were relatively, you know, safe, or what you would consider safe, or at least people just, you know, able to continue with whatever normal life is in those areas. They're now having to worry about immigrants or being robbed, or they have to keep their animals inside, if you know what I mean. And we're seeing more and more areas that are coming under this type of gang rule, this strange, like, what is really happening? And I know in one area they were talking about, there was even a police car that was trying to drive into a crowd to calm the crowd, and everybody piles on top of the police car and starts vandalizing the police car, and now the cops stranded and stuck. And so when that kind of chaos is happening in the United States, these foreign entities are going to be looking like, well, number one, the fastest, easiest way to take anybody down is with their wallet. And so let's devalue the dollar, throw them into a chaos, you know, send a bunch of people across their border, make a bunch of problems there, and destabilize the integrity. And that's part of the reason why I feel like, as a community of preppers and a constitution and patriots, we need to kind of stay in communication, stay together, and keep each other apprised of what's going on in these areas. So if you're listening right now and you're living in one of these areas or you're seeing some of these things in your neighborhoods, shoot us an email or send us a message somehow so that we can kind of get an idea of what's really going on, boots on the ground. Because I don't live in Colorado. I don't live in Springville. I don't live in New Jersey. I live in relatively quiet Rocky Mountain Wasatch Front right now, for now anyways. So that's just something that I was thinking about as it relates to once the powers of the world see the chaos here, I feel like they're going to say, well, look, America's weak. Now let's make our move.
Okay. I gotta go back to a comment that came out earlier. I believe it was Johnny. He mentioned, have you seen the statue outside of the UN? I hadn't. Yeah. And so I looked it up while you guys were discussing nuclear options, which, yikes. I had to pull this up. If you guys go look at this,
Book of Revelations.
The Book of Revelations talks about an end time beast. The United Nations had a lion-shaped beast with looks like a snake for a tail and wings of an eagle. Straight out of Revelations.
Oh yeah, dude!
And
wow.
Guess what?
Yeah.
They took it down, and after getting so many complaints in December of 2022, they took it down. So it was up from like November of 2021 to December of 2022. But here's what's interesting. There is a movie, and if you go look for it, it's a Disney movie called Coco. Mm-hmm. In the movie Coco, this statue looks so much the same as this Alihibre. I'm saying it probably wrong.
Right, the creature
spirit
there.
Animal.
Body
of a cougar or a lion, wings of an eagle. They're showing signs and they're showing symbols of their power, of what they're doing, what they're trying to accomplish. They always are letting us know, but they're always doing it in very sneaky ways. But that like blew my mind as soon as I saw that picture. I was like, "Whoa, that looks just like that animal from Coco."
Yeah.
And what's crazy is Coco came out in 2017. That came out in 2021 on the front steps of the UN. And here we are in 2024 talking about these things. A lot of that was missed because that was during a time and season of shutdown, right?
Yeah. Well, Paris, you were talking about kind of the local level. I did want to go there as well. We all heard of the gangs taking over apartment buildings, so forth. The Tren de Aragua, the Venezuelan gang. I saw a news. I'm gonna have to dig it up. News article or some announcement that actually there have been some gang members of TDA that have been arrested in Utah County, in our neck of the woods.
Oh, geez.
And so I'm always looking for things that are local. And, I live my own little bubble here. I don't see much. It seems like I don't see much. It's like always everywhere else, somewhere else. So that is a pretty big sign to me. It's kind of like when there are mice, you see one, there's a lot of mice. If you see a cockroach, there's a lot of cockroaches. So,
yeah,
and that's, so I got my nose
behind every ant you see is 1,000 ants coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We have to be aware of our local area, I think, more than internationally. Internationally, there's always a threat level. There's always threat risks. Nationally, there's always threat risks. But they kind of hit us equally. But we also have to be head on a swivel locally now more than ever. Like, just scripturally, we talk about everyone's going to kind of move into tribes. You're going to have to work really closely with your neighborhood in any disaster situation. Right. And you have to have your OPSEC to keep secret and safe what you have. But also you're going to have to balance localized security and working within your community. There's right now we have technologies and we're overly reliant on a lot of these things. Like we have the Ring doorbell cam on our house. And while it's great, it's also annoying. But you lose some sense of freedom with it. But I watch that thing because I have all the notifications turned on of what's going on in the neighborhood. Right, we've had in the last 2 weeks, we've had A guy tried to abduct some kids out of their front yard. Another guy, apparently we've got a flasher in my city, exposing himself to women that are jogging. We've had a couple late night, like 3 a.m, people trying to break into homes, all caught on Ring, right? And
Gunshots.
it's you've got to be aware of what's going on, especially in your local area, and you've got to be involved so that if you're involved and if you're showing strong, not necessarily showing all you have, but showing strong, showing that you're secure, showing that you have a community and that you're engaged, you're less of a threat. Everyone's looking for the weak link to break through. Don't be the weak link. Make sure your head's on a swivel and pay attention to those things. But yeah, I had no idea that we had Venezuelan gangs down in Utah County already up in here.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Salt Lake being a much bigger city is it's probably quite prevalent there.
Well, there was a ton. I don't know if you guys saw this, but our governor had made a deal with the governor of Colorado
I saw that,
to receive a bunch of folks, and so that might be where they came from or part of that. So I mean, it's just like, wow, dude, what we need to be aware of several different things, and that's the thing, is that we got to be aware of the weather. I mean, Mother Nature's trying to kill us all the time. Then we got each other we got to worry about. We got these people trying to kill, and then we got to worry about the elites and the food people trying to control our food, and the people trying to control what goes into our food and what we actually like. What in the world are we actually even eating, right? When we do eat something, what is even in it? You can't even pronounce the dang words on the ingredients sometimes, as we talked about in our last episode about becoming more healthy and being better prepared that way. It's just, another thing that's really kind of telling and really causing a lot of consternation especially amongst the patriots and the conservatives is, why was there a second assassination attempt on a potential president? And what in the world are the Secret Service / people that are in charge of security doing that's allowing these people to get so close and get into a position? Like I was listening to another podcast, and they're like, they had a bunch of people that were hunters and military, like shooters and snipers, and they showed the kind of the angle of where the guy was to where Trump was at the golf course, and everybody was like, dude, that's an easy shot. No, you don't even need sights for that. That's like a point and shoot kind of thing. How did the guy get there? How did the guy miss? Number one, like all these questions start coming up, and you're like, there's just too many. If it happens once, you're like, okay, that was, you guys didn't do your job. When it happened twice, now it's kind of like, okay, we got something going on here.
I heard a statistic today. I don't remember exact statistic, but the last two assassination attempts, it's been like 30 or 40 years since we've seen 2 assassination attempts. Well, yeah. Well, and so
have you heard about the third?
Definitely odd.
There was a third potential at the Tucson rally, where there were a lot of the people that were on stage came off saying that they had chemical exposure. You know what that was? Some of them experienced blindness. Yeah. For a number of days. 6 people that were all ended up getting checked out with the hospital. Like, it's suspect. Like, what's going on?
Well, most likely what that was
doing their job. We don't know what happened in Tucson. We also know that this last shooter, the Justice Department just released his declaration. Did you guys hear about that? So the shooter in at the golf place, he wrote a letter, and he basically said it's open season on Trump. I'll give everyone.
I saw that. Yeah.
Time to go make it happen. He's like,
$150,000, something like that.
Yeah, $150,000.
So the curious part about that is when is the last time that they let a manifesto out in the public that quickly? It usually takes years. Yeah. They've held it back, but this one, let's release this one right away. Yeah, curious.
So it makes you think, okay, if they're that scared of him, the establishment is that scared of him, they're going to do everything they can to continue to do everything that they're doing to undermine our country as fast as they can, and use that as smoke screens also as ways to get rid of him, but also the smoke screens with P. Diddy and everything else, so that we don't see what's going on with the WHO. We don't see what's going on with the UN. We don't see what's going on with the WEC, right? And so we have to be more aware, but not to the point where you're making yourself sick digesting news, because that can lead to a horrible life. And what's the point of living? Where's the joy in that? You want to focus on the positive. Like, we as preppers, our whole goal is to create a better future. Like, and quite frankly, a lot of the chats that I've seen in other groups, they get very dark very fast, and they get very argumentative very fast, and they really tear each other down. Some of you guys have been in those groups, in other like Facebook groups and other places. They're just destructive. And so what I've loved, like in our group, people will bring up these things in our group, and we've got a fantastic bunch of experts that are already in there talking about different things. One of the most incredible ones this week was about ham radio and frequencies and understanding. And Joseph, we're going to hopefully have him on soon. He was the one that posted that. And I was just like, man, this is one of the most informative, quick looks at ham that I've seen, I think, ever. And it's like, that's positive. Yeah. That's the right direction we should all be looking towards and moving towards, because if we're not taking the opportunities now to stay aware of what's going on, but then be building our resilience against it, there's not much to fight for. But if we have a vision of that future and we start doing the positive things, we've got a lot to fight for.
You're ruining my doomsday vibe there, Scott.
I know. I had to, because it was getting so sad. I was going to cry. I'm just kidding. It wasn't that bad. But I thought of that, and I'm like, I gotta weigh in on that real quick, because honestly, this week, bouncing in and out of that group, I was like, whoa, that's great content. Whoa, that's another great comment. Like, there's been so many really good things in there. I'm like, dang, this is awesome.
Well, I guess another comment I was going to say about Donald J. Trump. Have you noticed how they have put out, there are 5 different groups that are actually actively seeking assassination of Trump? Like, where'd that come from? Right. And why would they broadcast that out there? Why is that not kept secret? And then also, I think even Trump came out and said that he's blaming Iran. That they've got others seeking to assassinate him as well. So I just find all that just odd that that's coming out.
Well, somebody said there's at least 5 assassination teams that the CIA, FBI, whoever knows about in the country, right, that are ready to take things to obviously take care of business. So from their perspective, and with that kind of threat level, knowledge of that kind of threat level, why aren't they taking better precautions?
Exactly.
They should be taking better precautions, because they know those things are coming. They know those things are happening. What's crazy too is that I don't know if you've been following any of the lawsuits that have been put against Donald Trump, but those are all coming and being either dismissed or lessened, or just like none of it's coming out like the way that I think the left really wanted, which is interesting, because when they try to slander him and then it goes through the whole process and then it comes out saying, hey, he's not what we all thought he was, that actually it kind of ruins their whole agenda of trying to make him look bad. Now, I don't want to tell anybody who to vote for or how to vote. You that's your conscience. That's what you need to do. However, what I will say is, please, by the time this video, we're watching live right now, but by the time this drops as an episode, we're going to have just over a month, maybe 5 or 6 weeks till election day. Please go vote. The worst thing that that we can do is not vote, because we think that our vote's not going to count. I mean, even if they cheat or do something strange, if we turn out, not necessarily in droves, but if we turn out and vote, number one, we're really exercising our constitutional right as a people and in a constitutional republic to do what we're supposed to do. But we can have the moral authority to say, look, I voted. If it didn't turn out the way we wanted, at least you cast in your vote and have the ability to say that. So go vote and take your friends, as many as you can, get to that voting booth and vote. I have, I wish if you want to talk privately about who I want to vote for, and then we can talk about that. But
Go
at
down
least
to
vote,
the
for goodness sakes.
Go down to the Home Depot, pick up some Mexicans, that are there looking for work. Take them down with you.
Tell them you'll pay them X number of
Rent a
dollars
bus
if they
from
vote
Maine.
a particular way.
Pick up everyone you can.
Awesome.
Well, it's interesting because it's like you look at all the different things going on. The biggest challenge to America is our election right now. There's a lot going on. I think another big thing is obviously the border crisis that's now become gang crisis, which we talked about last year. We're like, yeah, this is going to get bad. These are armies. These are gangs. These are groups. Like, and you probably saw, I think we talked about this last time, the gang leaders in Chicago saying, oh, bring it. We're going to take you down. We're getting in some pretty dicey times. So being aware of what's going on, I think, is more and more going to be part of your daily must do. But always with the grain of salt. Like always, like, okay, is this real or is this misdirection? And it's interesting too. I was going to bring this up a little bit later, but Rebecca brought this up. Like, as we're getting closer to the election, like there are certain things we've got to be able to do in person to protect your vote. I don't know if you guys saw the news. This was 2 nights ago. I think I saw this, but Rebecca brought this up. Don't put your mail held by a ballot agent. And I think, Rebecca, you probably shared this with me on social media, and then I went and watched the actual news coverage of it. But yeah, there are groups that are capturing your ballots at the ballot stations. And they're like, yeah, I'm the official person collecting these. It's easier to put it in here so I don't have to take them out of the mail bin.
Wow.
No, just go vote in person. Like, and there's been news all over the world about letters being sent out. There's advertisements on news stations and TV, television, radio, everywhere, all over the world, where they're actually sending people or advertising for people to request their mail-in ballots wherever they're living internationally, so that they can get those votes mailed in. And my worry is, where are they going to get sent to? And are they going to get counted correctly or incorrectly like last time?
Okay, next thing I had on my list here that you kind of mentioned, Scott, is I saw an article about RPGs, a stash of RPGs being found on the U.S.-Mexico border. Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear about that.
And then there have been a bunch of IED attacks in California. There was there were hand grenades found in a tree in a park. There was an IED found in a courthouse and under a bridge or something like that. At least 3 of them that I've heard of in California. So we were talking about how things happen nationwide, worldwide. I always count that those things are eventually going to happen here. That's kind of a warning light. Be watching for these things. First.
Well, I was just going to say, how are these immigrants supposed to get all the weapons that they have if somebody's not stashing them somewhere? I don't know if you remember years ago, and it wasn't even that many years ago, where there was a whole report coming out out of Chicago, where these people were like, well, I was just walking through the alley and there was a box of guns, like in ammo right in the middle of it. Like, where are these things coming from? Where did they would take bricks or whatever and have bricks available. Like all of a sudden, like in these areas where they were having these riots, all of a sudden there was a stack of bricks available for the people to grab and throw at windows. Like it's just stuff like that is like these things that make you go, And it later found out that some of these places and these people were funded by a certain guy who starts with a G and lives in a foreign country. Anyways,
thinks he's a doctor.
Yeah. Anyways, the thing is that these types of things are something we need to be aware of and be ready for in our own neighborhoods and be prepared. Like sometimes I feel like I'm in, Happy Valley, Utah, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I can carry every day. And sometimes I have people like, man, if you're in such a good spot, why do you carry every day? 1, to get practice and be comfortable with it. That's the big thing. And 2, there will come a day when you don't know. Everybody in your neighborhood, I promise you, the people that were living their lives, their best lives in Aurora, Colorado, had no idea that in a week or two they were going to have a whole different situation. I promise you, the people in Springville, a couple months ago, or Springfield, whatever it is, a
Springfield,
couple weeks ago, months ago, whatever, they were living their best life, and they would probably say, "That's never going to happen here." The guys in New Jersey right now that are getting robbed at gunpoint in the middle of the day, they were like, "Nah, that'll never happen here." Right before you say it'll never happen here, catch yourself and realize that it could happen there, and you need to be ready and prepared for it. When we have so many world events happening, we got things going on all over the world and all over our country, and especially in an election year when the turmoil is at its highest, we got to be careful because they're propping stuff up right now. I'm following the market myself, and I'm just surprised that it's doing as well as it is. I'm like, any day now, this thing's supposed to just collapse, and it's not. Yeah. And I'm like, okay.
Well, it's because they have no other option. They're chasing yield, right? They got to make money. I mean, it's all about gambling. There's nothing real anymore, and so what's happening in the world that's real doesn't seem to affect it. It's bad news is good news, right? Yeah. But also, okay, I was going to say, have you heard the news coming out of China of what they just did to their economy? They just came out with a huge stimulus.
I can't remember.
Huge stimulus package where they're actually going to cut checks to the poor and the homeless. I mean, cash checks. They are reducing the bank reserve requirement. They are making money available for the different government entities to actually go out and buy homes. It's like the biggest stimulus ever, or one of the very biggest stimuluses they've ever done. And this just happened just yesterday in the past couple of days. So it is absolutely being propped up. Obviously, China's economy has been in trouble for a while because of their housing crisis and the developers, and I mean a lot of things. But China, in Japan a while back, they've had zero interest rates for 20 years, right? And they started to hike their interest rate. They barely raised it like a tenth of a point, like one basis point or something like that, and it started to crash their system. Everything is on a knife's edge right now. It's anything could set it off, but you never know the level of control they have and what they can do to just print more. I just think the next phase is going to be here in America, is going to be super hyperinflation, whatever you want to call it, where they're going to helicopter print money and just drop it out to everybody because they have to if they want to support the system.
There's so much chatter right now about a universal basic income that you start to wonder, like, why are we talking so much about that right now? I mean, speaking about China and America, like how many acres and square miles of land does China own in America right now? This is where, and the areas they own it in. It's just like, wait a minute, something's not right with what's going on here. So those are some other things I highly recommend. There was I don't know, I was reading a book on Stoicism actually, and maybe it was a different book. Anyways, the point is that I was reading a book on the three main areas to invest in are land, the market, and like your business. And so somebody mentioned about pulling money out of a 401k and investing in land. I think that's a viable option. Of course, you need to weigh everything, all the pros and cons, but definitely think about getting yourself some land, or at least enough land where you could have some sustainable gardens and some other things like that. We have great links in our description, by the way, for seeds. If you want to jump into the links and check out the seed packages that are available, because we got a great deal on seed packages that we have. But we need to be able to be self-sustaining in many ways, because I was just, we had on our show AJ Richards, who is from the farm, and he continues to put out content on his site talking about how many of these farmers are really being pressured to sell their land or sell out to the bigger farms. And it's just getting scarier and scarier that the more that our actual good, wholesome countrymen, farmers are being strangled, if you will, to produce at a rate that's not sustainable for them. and on purpose, so that they get, so frustrated they do sell, or they do sell out, to the bigger conglomerates. So it's just supporting local farmers is going to be a really good thing for us to do. And the more and more we can do that, the less and less that the powers that be, as they say, have the ability to stranglehold these local farmers out of their farms.
What's interesting is you were talking about Chinese-owned lands, and all these different groups have come into the country. And if you look where the land is that the Chinese holds, they don't own a whole lot, but it looks to me, very strategic in where it is that they own a lot of their stuff. They own a lot of land around Hill Air Force Base. They own a lot of land by the Dugway Proving Grounds here in Utah. They own land near Grand Forks Air Force Base. They own land near Fort Lewis in Washington. They own land all around Fort Irwin in Southern California. The Yuma Proving Grounds, they've got land around there. Camp Pendleton, they've got land around there. Like, why? Right around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right around Fort Moore. Like, I'll pop this in the chat feed, but the question, not only what are they doing, but why? There's always a purpose behind it. There's always a direction, right? Nobody buys a bunch of land just to buy a bunch of land.
Mm-hmm.
There's a purpose behind it. But it's really interesting. Ton of land by Patrick Space Force Base, MacDill Air Force Base in Florida. Like,
Well, they know their dollars are not going to buy them anything in the future, right? So those dollars come home to roost and buy real estate here in the U.S.
Yeah.
That's why they're buying tangible assets like land and gold and
gold. Yep. I heard a statistic today where central banks in the past 2 years have bought 3 times the amount of gold that they haven't previously, just since 22.
Interesting.
Yeah, that just came out recently.
And that's not to mention, that's just the Federal Bank Reserve. That doesn't mention what all the other countries around the world are doing. The countries themselves are buying more and more gold to try to keep the reserves, because they know, I mean, you got to think that some of these guys know what's coming and they're doing what they can to prepare. I'm not saying that you should buy gold before you buy food or before you buy water, but once you've got your food and you feel confident and you've got a good solid foundation in food and water and gear, it wouldn't hurt to have a couple ounces of gold or at least several hundred ounces of silver in case you need to do some bartering. But food, I think canned food will be a better exchange of value in SHTF before we get to the point where gold and silver will be a good exchange of value. So
I think you're right. Yeah. Gold and silver will have a huge opportunity for a very tiny window.
I think it'll be short too. Yeah.
It's going to be extremely short. And so that's why I'm like, yeah, I've got some, I'm like, do I need to get more? It'd be nice to have more, because then I can make it go a lot farther real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more importantly is making sure you've got that 90-day pantry. And then you're adding to it with your long-term storage, right? Getting a year supply. Remember that article that said that if there were a CME or an EMP, that 90% of the U.S. population would be gone?
Yeah.
I don't remember how quickly they said it.
Government report. Yep.
I think I know that a significant portion would be gone in 30 days, but I don't know after that.
It was within a year, 90% within a year.
Yeah. 90% within a year.
Less than a year.
So it's like, okay, so what are we trying to outlast and what are we trying to do? We see everyone's wanting our land, the United States. We also see there's a lot of threats on the inside. What we're going to go through, everyone else here is going to go through as well. So the gangs are going to have the same problems. Who's going to support them and feed them? Well, they're going to go out and try to take it from whoever has it. That's going to be a threat issue. So make sure you're definitely stockpiling my favorite precious metal. You know what that is?
Lead.
Brass, right? And what fills the brass? I think that's also a fantastic method of exchange, barter and trade. Like, I think there's going to be great uses for that. That's what I want to get more of. Even though I've got a lot, it's not enough. Right?
Yeah,
and
it's never enough.
What's that?
sorry, it's in my mind, you can never have enough of what you're describing there. Gold and silver, yes, I think you can have enough. I think you can have too much, depending on that window. When it goes to the moon, then you exchange it for more wheat and more, food, more supplies, whatever. That's my plan. Is when it takes that shot, that's when it's going to. Because obviously you can't eat it, and it really depends on what your plan is after the collapse. What you expect to happen after that. You read the New Testament, the Book of Revelations. It's pretty bleak, right? what is gonna happen. So if you believe that, that's what guides me in my saving and in everything I do. I mean, especially prepping wise. And so I think there are some things you can have too much of. But I have a strategic plan for myself, and but like you say, definitely more important to get the essentials first, because you can't eat, and like everybody says, you can't eat gold and silver. And I think the window will be fairly short. I have no idea how long. Hopefully 3 to 6 months. I don't know if it'll be that long, to where you can actually use it, and you're not considered in a black market, right? You're not considered a criminal for using it. I think you'll be able to barter with it for much longer, but to actually go and use it in the economy and not be an outlaw for using it, I think that will be very short.
I like that. That's a good idea. Practical. Go to different yard sales and estates, because you can get all kinds of good stuff there. And then this is good. Oops, right here. Modern Neanderthal says, I have a friend that fled the Bosnian-Serbian war, and he said that stocking vodka was a highly bartered item.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
That was another one. It's funny, jumping back on gold. Robert Kiyosaki, the guy that authored Rich Dad, Poor Dad, did an interview recently, and he was moving everything into physical gold. He's like, I have millions in gold. That's my safest investment. I'm moving so much into gold. And it's just like, great, but it has a window, right? Food is super valuable, right? Vodka, bourbon, all those things, those will be super valuable. Cigarettes will be like gold in some areas, right? They'll be valuable. Bullets will be valuable. Band-aids, medicines, like everything is going to have a value to the right person. And we need to learn, I think this would be a great thing to practice more, is bartering more. If you go anywhere else in the world, you don't just, they don't have price tags as often. You walk up to them and say, how much is this? And they'll tell you, you're like, oh, that's a little too much. Can you take this? Right? You barter back and forth. You negotiate. In the US, it's like, this is $14.95. Okay. We just take it. We've lost some of those skills. And so we need to learn those skills. As much as we need to be aware of what's going on, we need to be practicing and enhancing our skills, our ability to negotiate, communicate, to de-escalate tense situations, right? And to stockpile things that we know and feel will have value to someone in a time of need. This has been a fun episode. I appreciate everyone's comments. This has been extremely active in the chat. Thank you, everybody that's been participating. Just fantastic comments. Guys, you've got to keep your spiritual eyes open, your physical eyes open, and let those ears be listening, because you want to know how to be safe and stay safe. Well, follow God. It's simple. Follow God. Can't guarantee that you're not going to have something bad happen to you, but it's going to give you a pathway. He's going to give you guidance and direction, and that's the best solution, in my opinion. Any final thoughts before we wrap out the hour, guys?
Just my final thought is that the world is going to do what the world is going to do. And don't get so caught up in what the world's doing that you forget what your family needs to do. You forget what you need to do. And, we can all look at the market and say, oh my gosh, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, oh, China, Iran, Jerusalem, Israel, this, that, and the other. But if you're not making enough money to pay your bills, or if you're in debt up to your eyeballs, or if you don't have enough water or enough food, or if you don't have those, it's great to know about what's going on in the macro level, but really it goes back to that old saying, think globally, act locally. Make sure that you're doing what your family needs to do. to get ready, to get prepared, and to be and stay ready and stay prepared. So that's just my final thought.
Yeah, and one thought that's been guiding my preparedness more recently is thinking about what kind of future I'm preparing for, right? What kind of quality of life, what I expect, letting the Spirit guide me in my preps, right? Rather than trying to see what everybody else is doing and try and mimic and copy that. And a lot of great questions here tonight, you guys. This makes it so much more enjoyable, fun to chat with you guys. It's just not the same when we do a recording. So again, really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you everyone for participating in this fun-filled episode. As a reminder, we're brought to you by our good friends over at AMP3, but also medicine, first aid, those are important. Check out Jace Medical. Use the code PrepperTalk at either one of those sites. It'll save you some money. 15% at our friends AMP3, AMP-3.net, and Jace, JASE.com. And you'll get your emergency antibiotics. But here's one that we just learned about. You probably saw the podcast recently. This is the H2Go. This purifies water up like 32,000 to 36,000 gallons because it's rechargeable. You can run it off solar. Doesn't take much to make the solution you need to kill the bugs in that water. Very, very excited about this. We got a couple videos on the website about it too.
Cool. Yeah.
But use the code PrepperTalk over at H2GoPurifier.com and you'll save a little 10% over there, I believe. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for being part of the Prepper Talk Radio family. And remember, when in doubt, prep it out. Have a good night.
See you guys next week.
Take care, guys.